Hey, good evening, everybody. How are you? This is Freddie Ewan, three-time GM of the Year, 2022 Pantheon Cup Champion, the 2023 regular season champion, the 2024 Pantheon Cup runner-up, and most importantly, host of that fantasy football show with Freddie Ewan. Tonight is a huge night. Tonight is a huge night because I have a guest that I've been trying to get on forever. Everybody has been asking me when this guy is going to get on. He is the 2025 Pantheon Cup champion. I can never pronounce his last name, but he's got the greatest nickname in the world, Cousin Pat. Pat, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, Freddie. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Um, I gave you, well, first of all, um, if you haven't noticed, I got to stand up a little bit, but I am wearing your Jackson Dart jersey. We had a bet. I have given Pat hell, probably because I love Pat so much. When I was a kid, my mother always told me that the people that I pick on the most are the people that I always like, and the people that I'm overly nice to are people that I dislike. So I have picked on Pat like you wouldn't believe when it comes to fantasy football, and he basically just what I forget what president said, but speak softly and carry a big stick because you absolutely whipped my ass this year. We had a bet you were going to have to watch every single one of my shows if you beat me, if I beat you, and if you beat me, I would have to do a show in a Jackson Dart jersey. This is like my sixth show in a Jackson Dart jersey, so I'm starting to get like don't get your hopes up. I'm not going to be a New York Giants fan anytime soon.
You might be a Jackson Dart fan, however. I mean, I don't blame you.
There just came a there was just a video out of him doing some. You might have posted it, but he was at threw some pass, but he's out in a lake. He's from Mississippi. Is he from Mississippi?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I know he went to Mississippi down south, but he's like a good old boy playing in New York. Life
Mhm.
Lifelong Giants fan, Pat. I know there's a lot of excitement which the New York Giants haven't had in a long time with Dart, with Cam, with Neighbors. You got a Super Bowl winning coach. T Tell me what your expectations are for the Giants this year.
Like as you mentioned, lifetime Giants fan, so you have to take everything with a grain of salt. There's as you can hear with a lot of teams in the East, there's always high hopes before the season starts. Everyone thinks they're going to the Super Bowl, and rarely does it pan out for most of them. But there's a lot of potential. There's talent with surrounding Dart, and they just continue to add to it. So it's just a matter of following through.
Eh,
So if you're asking me for a prediction on whether I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, I don't, but I do think that they are going to make a run for the playoffs this year. So we'll
I
see what
think
happens.
I think the Giants are doing everything right. Their draft picks seem to be panning out. They have a lot of young guys on both sides of the ball. They made a great trade with Cincinnati, I thought, to grab another draft pick. And I think the Giants are a team to watch out for. The other thing is, and it goes so far about, organizations mean everything, and it goes from the top up. I think, you look at the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't think they'll ever be successful until Jerry Jones is gone. And, similar to it's still going to pan out what happens with Washington, since Snyder's gone, it's like the year after Snyder leaves, they have this great season. They go to the NFC Championship game for the first time in like, 1993 or something like that. And last year, Daniels gets injured. So I mean, it's, still to pan out, but it's a great division. There's so many great rivalries in that division.
Mhm.
I grew up with all Giants fans, so it was like I was the only Eagles fan. So Pat is a member of the greatest fantasy football league, the TPFFKL. You came in 2 years ago, 2 years ago, and the strategy, I think, if you really look at the strategy, is the first you inherit a team, so you basically inherit a team, and the cap space that they use. This is a league where we switch cap from back to back. Sometimes if you inherit a team, it might not have a lot of cap space. It usually doesn't have a lot of cap space, but what Pat did was basically the best 2 year run that you can do is where I think the year before that you started off with a really bad record and you made the decision to tank your team very early. And when you tank your team very early, you know you're in for a really shitty rest of the season, but you're gonna be able to sell your assets for the highest price. I know I traded you a bunch of young prospects and a bunch
Mhm.
of money, and you basically took that bad year and turned it into a championship, a rare championship. Um, what's the mindset when you that year before when you were tanking your entire team? It's hard to think so far down the road.
Yeah, so it wasn't an easy decision to be honest with you because I was looking at the teams I was going to be playing against for the remainder of the season, and I was forecasted to be pretty close to most of them. So I had the opportunity of possibly making the playoffs. Um, but honestly, the possibility of making the playoffs wasn't going to get me a championship necessarily. So I'd rather at that point get the top dollar for my team. And I know that majority of the well, at least the keepers that I had to select from, they weren't my guys. They weren't my farm team. So I had no problem unloading.
That's and then the other thing is, I'm looking at, I'm looking at the team that you had, the team that won the championship, and we were just talking about this before we got on the show. I Bucky Irving, Brian Thomas Jr., Baker Mayfield, Josh Downs, they were all capable players for a really low cost price, but really, it goes amazing on how well you actually drafted this team. Baker Mayfield, let me just give you a couple numbers. Baker Mayfield was the number 12 overall quarterback. The Bucky Irving was number 31 overall running back. Brian Thomas was way down there. Let me even see if I can find Brian Thomas. I
Yeah,
think he was,
he had a terrible season.
yeah. And Josh Downs, who again the year before showed a lot of promise, did really not do much either. So yeah, here's Brian Thomas was number 43 overall, but you drafted, and you took some guys who were very much risk reward almost, Christian McCaffrey, obviously, the guy was anyone who picked him the year before was screwed. However, this year he was the running back one overall. Same thing with Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry is 176 years old. He turns into the running back seven. Wide receivers, and even this just shows how well you made some of these picks. You spent a lot of money on CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb missed 3 games. He was the wide receiver for 20. He only scored 3 touchdowns. But some of the guys that you actually took that really, really panned out, Zay Flowers, wide receiver number 7, Davante Adams, wide receiver number 8, um, Mecca, wide receiver number 19, and then we get to tight end, and I think you might have did this just in spite of me almost. You spent $2 on Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert turns out to be tight end number 4 that year. So the guys you picked really, really hit, man. What was did you have any particular strategy at all going into that? Because you hit on this draft.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when it came to the tight end spot. I was mostly just trying to mess with you, but you had a small cap, so I ended up just stealing your guy, which was I did get some joy out of, I will admit. The rest is more, the research that I did, they were forecasted to do well. As you mentioned, some performed better than they were expected to, and some didn't. Sometimes it works in your favor.
I mean, and the other thing is, in this is a league where it's not a super flex league, but it's not a typical quarterback league where, it's a big difference where a quarterback gets 6 points for a passing touchdown. And I gave you a lot of hell for going with Baker the entire year, and I think I tried to make you a couple trades to get rid of Baker, and you kind of stuck with him. I mean, Baker wasn't. I think Baker was like he was consistent throughout the year. He didn't have any huge games, but I think he was consistent. But still, you're in a 12 team league. He's a 12 overall quarterback, and it just goes to show. I mean, the regular season, I think you finished second, and then you just ran it off in you ran it off in the playoffs, and now you're the Pantheon Cup champion. You have a X marked on your back. Um, what are what's your strategy this year there he is right there. I
Right
wanted a
here.
cup, but the Pantheon Cup right there.
Hmm.
Does that have everyone's names on it? We have not had that on the show yet. So the Pantheon Cup names, look at this. Rich, of course, myself, James 2023, Neil in 2024, and Cousin Pat 2025. 2026, who knows? And I was shocked too, Pat, because you know, some of these guys, I think I think Jimmy is a really good fantasy football GM. I think Teji is a really good fantasy football GM. I think James is a really good fantasy football GM. You pretty much just ran these guys over in the playoffs.
Well, it's all a matter of them, hitting their stride at the right time, right? I found myself on the right side of the bracket as well. Had I played either Teji or Jimmy in the semi, they would have blown me away. So that's it's not much you can say there except fate being on your side.
That's one of the great things about, fantasy football is, there is a thought process, there is a big skill process involved, but it's like I always compare it to poker because, I played poker for a living for a very long time, and I always compare it to poker tournaments in particular because it doesn't matter how well skilled you are or what, if the cards don't fall your way, you're not going to do well in the poker tournament. If the cards do fall your way, you are good. And the same thing goes, especially in the fantasy football playoffs, where you get the right matchup. It's going to help. You're on the other side of that. You could be done in a week. So there's so much luck of the draw and so much of a coin flip once the playoff begins. I always wish there was something really to offset that in fantasy football, but I think that but at the same time, you got to get lucky in anything. And you still making that run, you still beat, I think you beat James and then you beat Teji and regardless, two tough GMs to beat. And looking at your team, it seems like like I said, you had a lot of money, but you really drafted the guys that got it done for you.
Yep.
What
Yeah. So like you mentioned, it shows a matter of picking the right, not just picking the right players, but then getting lucky at the end of the day that they're going to perform. Because some of those big picks that I spent money on flopped, and some went the other direction. So hope to have a similar luck this year, but we'll see. I am confident in the keepers that I have that they will perform. But just like we saw last year, some of them might not. So at the end of the day, as long as I can beat you, Freddie, I'm
that's
okay. I'm happy.
that's all that matters. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Well, I mean, once again, I'm starting off with like the least cap and didn't make the playoffs last year, and we need to make some other kind of bet. Um, I I I am not going to get you a 96-inch cheesesteak. I'll tell you that. I'm not betting any more 96-inch cheesesteaks. But um, so what is the strategy this year exactly? You have $170 in cap room, which believe it or not, which is also impressive. When I won, I do this every year, and I might be a little bit different, but it's like I always spend a lot during the regular season. You know, you're actually in a position where it's like, I mean, you're on the bottom of it, but you still have a fair amount of cap room to really put yourself in another good position. I was looking at your keepers, and it's like, it's almost the same keepers that you had before, like, Bucky and whatnot. Um, a lot of these guys you're not going to be able to keep, like CMC, because it has a huge price tag on it. Derrick Henry, Lamb, they're probably all going to have to go back into the player pool, and you're going to have to be a little tricky. Do you remember the first year you started, how much cap room you started with?
Um, I think I was rough. It was almost 200. I think I was actually just shy of 200, like 190.
And I mean, that's kind of the thing that sucks about taking over this league is you don't really get to, the first year it's not really your team and your cap room, and you're almost thrown into it and whatnot. But now this is like, this is definitely your team in this league, and this is the only fantasy football league you're in, correct?
I am actually joining another league as well this season.
Nice, Pat. Nice. So before the TPFFKL. How long was it before you played? Did you take years off?
There was one other league that I played, I think the year before, which was a small little family league. But prior to that, it was probably about 7 or 8 years that I hadn't played fantasy football.
Damn, that's awesome.
But I ended with a championship there as well.
That's awesome. So back into it. Now you're playing in two leagues. All
Hmm.
it does, and like I said, this is my favorite thing about fantasy football is we can talk about, players and whatnot at the end of the day. But, at the end of the day, someone said to me one time, he said something like, "Oh, I mean, we're old. It's been a long time since we were in high school." But he was telling me about like all the people that still talk to each other in high school that are still buddies. They're still buddies through fantasy football, and that's the great thing about fantasy football and whatnot. You meet a lot of people. You make a lot of friends with people who you would not have met in between. You know what I mean? Which always makes it really really fun. Here's the last question before I'm going to leave you with this is. I know this is a nickname, and I know you're Nunzio's cousin and everything, but it, h- how did you get the nickname? Is that just something that they called you? How long have you been called Cousin Pat for?
Only since I was introduced to this group.
All right.
Because I'm Ninja's cousin. So I'm
And
cousin Pat.
and that came from Joe Moo.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Pat, because every time I look at you and I look at your last name, Pat, how do you pronounce it?
Mark Antuono.
You just got done from a trip from Italy, right?
Yep.
You're about as fucking Jersey as you can get. But you weren't born in Jersey, right?
I was born in New Jersey.
Oh,
Yeah.
you were born in Jersey. All right. You were born in
Yep.
Jersey, but where in Jersey were you born?
Glenridge.
Glen Ridge. Okay, I used to date a girl from Glen Ridge.
Glenridge Hospital. Lived in Livingston.
And moved down to Virginia.
Yep. In elementary school, probably kindergarten.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I spent most of my life here in Virginia. I spent 3 years down in or 2 years down in northern Florida, St. Augustine, and a year in Charlotte. Outside of that, I was K through college here in Northern Virginia, and then my career, most of it was up here too.
You lived in St. Augustine?
Yep.
What years?
Moved down there in 2016, and then
No
2017 I
kidding.
went up for a year to Charlotte,
Uh-huh.
my wife's family,
Right.
and moved there, and then came back down for 2 more years.
That's funny. My parents live in St. Augustine. I'm actually in St. Augustine right now.
Oh, very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. My brother went to Flagler and I went to University of North Florida in Jacksonville. And God, I've lived like on and off in St. Augustine for it seems like every serious relationship I've ever been with, I met the girl in St. Augustine, which is
Hmm.
funny, but um it's a nice little town, isn't it? Where in
Yeah.
St. Augustine did you live?
I still have the house. I'm renting it. It's off of 210, so it's a little bit further north. Basically, as far north as you can get on St.
Sure,
Augustine
sure,
before
yeah.
you hit Jacksonville, but
Right.
in county.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. It's a great little place. It is a great little
Anyway,
place. How long have you had the house for?
since 2016.
No kidding. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. I'm in the process of buying my parents' house, so it's, I don't know, maybe we'll have Airbnbs together or go and do an Airbnb business at some point.
There you go.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Pat, good luck, man. Good luck. I am going to, like I said, I haven't done it a lot on this show, but in the TP and the chat box, I abused the shit out of you. I sent you a Tito Santana cameo. And like I said, you don't talk as much as me. You're a quiet guy. You speak softly, carry a big stick, but I'm still gonna talk shit all year long, Pat, and I'm probably gonna have to eat it once again. But that's what I do. I usually stick my foot in my mouth. So congratulations, the 2025 Pantheon Cup champion. Something Jimmy does not have, something Joe Murray will probably never have, something Bowser may have, and something you'll only have once. But once again, congratulations, Pat, for let me see the trophy one more time. Just show the trophy one more time.
I'll
That
show it to
is
you since you're probably not going to be holding it for a while. So,
probably not. That's beautiful. I,
but
I and
thanks
when
again for having me.
I want to know when we get to actually hold the trophies, the past winners, because we just got this year. But we'll figure it. I'll bring that up with the commissioner. Anyway, thanks so much, cousin Pat. I'll see you on the gridiron.
Thanks. Good
All right, be
luck.
good.